The government are saying your coins are a security. Chainlink finally fixing that fence. And are drones bridging up all the way to Moscow? This is around the blockchain.
That's pretty good.
Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Make sure you hit that like. If we hit 500 likes tomorrow, I'm going to give a Woody Harrelson monologue. It's going to be great. We got some great guests today. We're going to get right into it. On the top left, we have Joe Parys. And Joe, how's it going? I've seen your tweets. You're getting a tan lately.
I'm enjoying the sun out here in Puerto Rico, DZ. We got some green back in the market today a little bit, so life is good.
All right, and I just saw that viral vid of the avocados. I hope they're not coming from your property. Also on today's episode, we have Your Biz, and he might be playing around with some filters, so you got to keep an eye out on this guy. Seth, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Always a good time. And then also we have Crypto Keeper. He is back up. You can also check him out at Debate Crypto OG. Keeper, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Adam Charles is begging me for a shout out, so I'm going to give it to him. He said,
we love Adam Charles. Adam, I still got the belt up. I wreck you all the time. And I always share our story of our good times in Miami. It was a good time. And first time on the show, it is TShroom. TShroom, I got to ask you out the gate, where'd the name come from?
Well, my last name is Shrum, and people always pronounce it incorrectly. And also, shrooms are cool.
All right. I thought it was that weird brewed drink that you gave me last time we were hanging out. I haven't been the same since, but you opened up my mind's eye, and I'm still thankful for it. We're going to be talking about, first, Gensler's fantasies and what is he saying that he is trying to get his way is going to be pretty bad. Because he's saying literally everything except Bitcoin is a security. As Congress is regulating, this is a big question that needs to get solved, whether it's regulatory clarity, whether it's going to be solved by Congress, whether it's going to be the judicial system. Something needs to happen. We can't just go in these uncharted waters continuously. But, they're using a Howey test, and just a brief description of the Howey test. It's 4 criteria. If money's invested, an expectation that the investor will earn a profit, the investment is a common enterprise, and then the profits are generated via the efforts of others. Now, Your Biz, call me a little crazy, but isn't it a little ridiculous to say everything except the coin behind you right now is a security? What are your thoughts when you hear that literally every single thing is except Bitcoin is a security? Could that possibly be true?
Well, DZ, I think first off, it's not a ridiculous thing to say. It's a ridiculous thing to try to enforce. And I think as a taxpayer here in the United States, I don't think that it's feasible to talk about enforcement action on everything except Bitcoin being a security. So let's just pretend for a minute. Let's suspend our disbelief and give Gensler the benefit of the doubt and pretend just for a second, right? We'll use our imaginations, and we'll pretend just for a second that everything that isn't Bitcoin actually is a security somehow, magically. Right? To the power of imagination. Everything but Bitcoin is now fails the Howey test. It's absolutely evil, basically complete Ponzi-nomic garbage. But how do we enforce it? And I submit to you, my friend, it's basically impossible. It's like waging an endless war. It becomes the war on alpha. It becomes the war on anything that doesn't do proof of work exactly what we want it to, and have a cottage industry surrounding it that we can then prop up here stateside in a way that is familiar, right, over the last 100 years, as we've done with so many other industries since the Industrial Revolution. So I think we can start with that fundamental question and just say, Gensler, buddy, you got it all wrong. You can't possibly enforce this. Pick a better battle.
Yeah, Gensler, buddy, come on, friend, have a seat. What are you doing? You're crazy, man. Now, Joe Parys, a lot of what they're deeming if it isn't a security is at any point in time, it was sufficiently decentralized. They're saying, Bitcoin at this point is now efficiently decentralized. But it appears that we're going to be pushing a lot of things overseas. Now, you talk to a lot of gaming projects, you talk to a lot of small cap projects, and you've talked to a lot of teams directly. You've talked to these developers directly. In your experience, are you seeing more and more of these projects be based overseas? And have you been talking to any American-based teams lately?
Well, thanks, DZ, for having me back on the show. Really appreciate being here. And yeah, recently, a lot of founders have just reached out to me randomly. And one of the things that they have been saying is that there's just been more buzz in the air about what the SEC is going to do. So they just kind of want to, really be careful about what's, happening. But no, not yet, right? Like until there is actually a decision, I don't hear very many teams going, "Oh yeah, we're moving overseas tomorrow. We just want to be safe." No, I think that they're, genuinely here. They're here to build the best products that they can. And one of the founders said to me, he's like, the barrier to entry of being a really good crypto project right now is so low. And it's really interesting because I think the problem with crypto right now and why it gets so much scrutiny and why the SEC is really starting to look at this is because you do have a lot of unfortunate bad actors and bad things happened. And that's unfortunate, right? You look at Celsius, Luna, you look at, FTX and all the people that, their money got taken away and it just it's a mess. I think that's why Gensler is just so quick to just be like, okay, this is the band-aid, we're gonna fix it by just saying they're all securities, right? And it's like, I don't think that's the right approach. Like Mind Your Biz was saying, it's impossible to enforce. It's not going to really help anyone, and it will drive people to either just pay fines, which is obnoxious. So that will hurt everybody all the way around. And then also, yeah, you may have projects that will have to be forced to go overseas because there's just no other option. So right now, I don't see anything, DZ, but we'll see what happens when they actually finally do make a decision.
Yeah, you remind me, just today, you see the ape hoodie, the hat right here. I had to travel all the way to Mexico to collect my ape and then deposit it and restake. And it's just very tough all the way in Georgia. I don't like doing that plane trip every time to unstake my 23 ape coins there. Now, Keeper, it seems like one of the criteria here is whether or not you're decentralized. And I'm trying to find a silver lining to this cloud. Is a possible silver lining is now maybe projects are going to work to be more decentralized? Is that a possibility? Muted.
Yep, I was muted. I realized it right away. I'd like to say that this decentralization has been a buzzword in the crypto space for a while now, and we talked about it actually just a little bit ago on Debate Crypto. It's a beautiful idea. The problem comes into play when you bring money into it, right? So ultimately, what are all of these different trying to do? Well, you might be, or they might be here for the tech, but they're here to make money. And part of the problem with the decentralization issue is how does somebody come in, create a platform of some sort, create a project, create a cryptocurrency that is so decentralized, but yet they can funnel money back to themselves. So what's happening is these projects are coming in, they create a solution and they say, wait a minute, this is a great solution. I have taken a problem and I've given it the answer, or I have the answer to the problem. Now I need to get compensated for that. And so I think part of the issue is I don't want to share that with everybody. It's not really most of the time for just the good of the space. It is for the good of the people who created the project. It is for the good of the people who are involved on a day-to-day basis. How do we compensate all of those people? How do we solve problems and keep it decentralized? If we could figure that out, which I think that nothing's coming to mind right offhand. I'm sure somebody on the panel here, since you guys are so daggone smart, probably could give me a good example. But there are examples of decentralization, I'm sure, that would fit the bill, but there's not a lot of them. So I think it comes down to greed. I think it comes down to control. I think it comes down to money. So I'd love for it to happen. I just don't really see it being a normal, the normal thing.
Yeah, and even I'm obviously biased with Cardano. A lot of people say this is one of the more decentralized L1s, but they had an ICO in Japan. And so you could say that is definitely a point of centralization there.
Yeah.
Now, TShroom, welcome to the show. First of all, I want to say thank you. Make sure everybody go follow him at TShroom. And if maybe he has good tea recipes involving, different fungi, maybe not. You can always segue into that TShroom. I'm brainstorming some branding ideas here for you. But according to, recent history, a lot of these protocols are just getting fines, maybe $30 million here, $1 million here, $5 million here. But then, the other strategy is, spend hundreds of millions, potentially tens of millions, potentially on legal fees trying to fight them. Is their strategy here just to strong arm 1,200 crypto protocols into paying 7-figure fines here? What do you think they're the end game here? Is it really a racketeering charge? Because I feel like this is mafia 1950s moves. Am I incorrect in that assessment?
I don't think you're incorrect at all, DZ. I think that what we're dealing with here is a classic bully on the playground situation. The SEC is extremely experienced in being unfair to the other kids on the playground. They've been doing this with the stock market, and they've been even encroaching in the commodities market for years and years. This is nothing new. Crypto is the new kid on the playground, right? So of course they're going to try to do the same thing. Unfortunately, well, fortunately for us, it's taken them a while because they're not too bright over there. So it's taken them a while to actually figure out how and what they can do. And now that they've been going over going against the stable coins, it's been tough, and it's definitely been making some people scratch their head. But ultimately, what do you do here if you're a big project and you're looking to make the decision? You're working with your legal team, saying, "Do we pay this fine? Do we not pay the fine?" If I'm a legal advisor, I'm saying don't pay the fine, guys, and we all need to not pay the fine, because if we pay the bully, right? If we let the bully punch us and we don't punch back, then we're just going to be getting punched every single day at recess, right? Again and again and again. And so I say don't pay the fine, right? See what happens on the other side of that. I think there's already some companies like XRP, right, that are already well down that pipeline, and we're going to see what happens, right? I definitely don't pay the fine until XRP case has been settled. Right. So, but if you're Paxos, right, you're kind of sweating because you have the SEC right on your tail at this point. You're probably thinking, should I listen to my legal team? Should I go ahead and not pay this? Should I pay it? You're trying to figure it out. But as we've learned out on the recess, and I've been fortunate to stay out of prison, but as unfortunately some people have to learn in prison, you got to stick up for yourself. You can't just capitulate to the bully, or else you will be the whipping boy for the rest of time. And we do not want that for crypto. And we do not want to let the SEC continue to be the big guy on the block. In fact, if crypto can move forward here without having to pay these fines, really build some momentum, we could potentially be so big that we could oust the bully altogether and get some real good reform here in the United States and in the West in general to try to overhaul what the SEC has done in its corrupt status and the way that it totally mismanages and falsely addresses the securities that are owned and traded by millions of Americans every day, and they're not properly protected by any agency in the United States. So
all right,
that's the way that I see it.
Hard agree.
I'm just racking up those points, baby.
No, I hard agree, and I definitely agree with you don't want to escalate to the prison yard shot collar situation. You're sharpening a toothbrush every morning. I do recommend check out the video game Bully. So if you are Paxos, you are Coinbase, hey, maybe play this game a little bit, and you don't have to do it in the metaverse. Get your training in the metaverse, folks. All right, let's move on and talk about Chainlink. And if those wondering at home, yes, I bought my 0.1 Chainlink today. I always DCA into Chainlink, but they are launching a platform that's going to allow these developers to more easily connect to Web 2 API data. Just think of just a regular website that has nothing to do with the blockchain, sports scores, weather updates, stock markets, things like of that nature. And the beta version right now is on a testnet, ETH's, so Polia testnet and Polygon's Mumbai testnet. Now, mind your biz, I have a little bit of a lack of understanding when it comes to these test nets. I'm trying to get airdrops here. I'm on like Guarly and these weird things that sound like pastas. When you saw that they're testing it on these particular test nets, what does that mean to the layman? Does that mean this is the last step before utilization? Is this a early stage? What do these test nets do?
Well, these test nets, first off, I appreciate that you're asking my opinion on this, and pay no attention to the laser eyes. I blame Crypto Keeper from Debate Crypto. This is actually his fault that my eyes are glowing. But as far as this being, just saying, man, you got to own that. You got to own that, Keeper. Sometimes you got to just wear the L. But like,
it's a good look.
But as far as this being launched on the Mumbai testnet of Polygon, all that means, Easy, is that developers are going to be able to start testing out this new functionality that Chainlink is offering in a low-fee environment. And I love that you brought up the recent news about the Goerli testnet on Ethereum and how randomly there was some market made for it. A friend of mine texted me the article about it yesterday morning, and I mean, I made me wish that I had more of these testnet tokens that are technically worthless on paper. But yesterday, they had a market made for them up to $22, I guess. I mean, clearly, a small fortune was made by somebody, just not me, on Mumbai testnet for Polygon. That shouldn't be the case, but we live in a world now, right? We live in a society, apparently, where you can take what are free tokens and then go create a market with them. In the case of Chainlink, though, all this does is give developers a way to say, okay, all that rich data that Chainlink already gives us as an oracle to be able to give us price feeds is now being paired to more practical feed data that gives us even more context. Developers in Web3 should absolutely be like shouting this from the rooftops, trying to get their Web2 developer counterparts involved, trying to get VC funding to get these edge cases that were previously impossible for. And they should be doing this in this free environment. Like you're asking about, like it doesn't cost anything else. All it requires is sweat. So I think we are going to see a renaissance of some truly innovative building during this bear market because of technologies like this. I'm excited about it.
Now, mind your biz. I know it's not Monero, but totally separated from price. Are you bullish on the Chainlink team and the protocol as a whole?
No comment.
No comment. All right. You know, and again, not trying to get any kind of price predictions out of you. I didn't know if you had any insight on given their history. And I do know they sell a lot of tokens. I didn't know if you had any opinion on that. Now, Joe, you know, Coinbase, they obviously have almost all the Oracle action is happening with their chain. What made Chainlink so successful in your opinion? Was it just Metcalfe's law? Did they just really just get ahead of everybody and just next thing you know, monopoly just born out of nowhere? Why are they still number one?
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, there's multiple different factors to why anything is successful, right? But what I will say, and what I remember personally about Chainlink is the price action and how parabolic it went. And as crazy as that sounds, and to really make it really simple for people, why do people invest in crypto? Their first motivation, more often than not, is to watch their, the portfolio and the coin go up, right? That's what they're, most likely investing in, right? But for most retail investors. And so if you take a look at the price at Chainlink, right, for quite a while, I remember the first time I bought Chainlink, DZ, was at 25 cents, literally like all the way back in 2017, 2018, 25 cents. And then it went all the way as high as $50. And so today it's sitting at a $3 million or $3 billion market cap. And, you can look at the team, you can look at, being one of the first mover advantages, having a better product. You can look at all those different things, better tokenomics, right? They're like the circulating supply right now, about half is in circulation according to CoinGecko. So you can look at all of those factors, right? And they do matter. But the biggest thing that matters the most is the price, right? People want to see the price going up. And if you look at Chainlink's chart, like it has this, it's really weird. It'll go, the guy from Token Metrics said it the best. I forgot his name. The wider the base, the higher into space, right? And if you look at Chainlink right now, like it typically keeps doing that where it just trades sideways forever, bores you to death, and then all of a sudden it just rockets. So again, no one knows what will happen in the future, but that's just what, has happened in the past. And yeah, I definitely think price is a huge indicator of why people are, still so bullish on it.
All right. I would agree. And, honestly, I kind of have a similar story. I didn't get in at 25 cents. I got in at $2, held it, did not take much profit at all. I don't even know if I took any. Honestly, I probably bought more when it dipped in May and June. All right. Now, TShroom, they're kind of upgrading what they're known for. They've always been kind of known as like developers use it. It's in the background. Now they're trying to make, user-friendly dashboards. They're trying to invite, just regular Joes can come on and, figure out, just tool around. Next thing you know, you can use some Chainlink oracles. Do you think it's smart for them to stray out of their lane where they have been so successful? Or do you think that maybe they're doing a little too much?
Well, look, DZ, they're node operators. And what is a node they're an oracle, excuse me. They connect node operators with smart contracts, right? And the nature of that is data transfer, right? And that's essentially what this Chainlink Functions new platform is going to be doing, right? I don't see it as getting that far out of their lane, to be honest. To be honest, I think it's a good thing to diversify. You see a lot of other projects doing some diversification. Perhaps we'll talk about that a little bit more. So there's been some big projects get into kind of branching out into their offerings in the crypto space, into Web3, pretty recently. But look, Chainlink is a blockchain data provider. They provide data, and not just in crypto. They provide to betting apps, right? They provide news, right? There's all kinds of. It's a very interwoven, interconnected service that they provide. And as a market oracle, with I've got it written down, over a 3.7 billion market cap. It's huge, right? Trading at $7, almost 7.50. It's up 35% since January, which is actually less than Bitcoin, which is up 42%. But it's number 19 on CoinMarketCap, and it's that for a reason, right? And it's because it is, like what you said, DZ. It has a near monopoly in the market, and I don't see many other projects that are anywhere near close to touching what Oracle. Yeah, see, it's synonymous for the term. It's almost reached Google status. What Chainlink has been able to accomplish. So moving out of their lane, right? A lot of good companies have just done well by staying in their lane. I think Chainlink is just dominant in their lane. They are the lane, right? Kind of what Google was uh, for search engine, and so I think diversification just makes sense. It makes sense at this point, even if you fail in that, right? Depending on how big of failure, but let's say you don't start to erode market cap, that could be a problem, right? But it's not a big one because you don't lose your big strong horse that's still running the race really well in that monopoly, right? So I think it's great. I say go for it. I don't see them dropping the ball here because the nature of what they've been doing since day one is data transfer, and it doesn't seem like they're getting too far away from that. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree. I was kind of setting you up there. I agree. It's not too far. It's less of a pivot, more just like a nudge on the steering wheel there. Maybe just increasing the base of people who now can build with Chainlink. All right, now, Keeper, I want to ask you about price. We keep talking about how's, this darling of the last bull market. He brought up it's up roughly almost 40% since January. This is the 90-day chart here. You can see it, it hit a nice little low right there at the end of the year, $5.40. Now trading at $7.50, but we hit that all button there. You could see here's those Joe Parys levels. Those Joe Parys, me, DZ, the idiot, coming in at $2 and then selling at $4. Boy, did I think I was smart. But nice little cap there, hitting $50 with the first bull run for Bitcoin in 21. Is it going to perform similarly? A lot of people just very, very bullish Chainlink. And I consider it one of the few coins where maybe people hold it for more than one bull run, a 10-year hold. Do you think Chainlink can perform similar to how it did in 21?
Yeah, I do. One of the things that people complain about with Chainlink is the tokenomics. So whatever the very specific details of those I always hear people complain about Chainlink's tokenomics. And so that being a problem, the reality is, though, I'm such a utility guy. We talk about it a lot. I think that this next bull run that we're about to step into is going to be a utilitarian bull run. We've done the meme coin thing. We've done a lot of the NFT stuff. I think that'll continue to progress. But I think that the utility behind Chainlink is so simple, but it's so necessary. We're moving from Web 2 to Web 3, and information has to go from point A to point B. Now, this newest thing that they're stepping into is saying, hey, allow us to do this, or we're going to help do this with smart contracts. And smart contracts are in the NFT space. And smart contracts, unfortunately, are going to be the central point of central bank digital currencies. So they're involving themselves in everything that is happening in the crypto space. And so if we do indeed have a bull run that what I would say makes sense, meaning, hey, does this solve a problem? Yes. Do I believe long term what this company is doing, what this DAO is doing, what depending on what we're looking at? Yes. Do I believe that it can be successful? Yes. Okay, I'm going to invest in that. And so I see that being the case, and I see Chainlink being one of the most outright, just bold, in your face, simple solutions in crypto. When you always talk about, I bought my couple dollars worth of Chainlink, or I bought, I DCA'd into Chainlink. I've always thought, since you started saying that, that's really freaking smart, DZ, because I believe in what Chainlink is doing, and the use case is there. Everybody's using it. The information has to move from point A to point B. So yeah, I could see it having another huge run. Will it be as big? Will it hit those same levels? Well, that's going to depend on what does Bitcoin do? How does Bitcoin respond if we're not in a market where we are just printing money without regard for anything or anyone else? So I think that we will have to see how the rest of the market moves. But long term, as I always look at, I hold some Chainlink myself. I don't hold too many crypto. I think I have 7 or 8 overall right now that I'm holding with any sort of substantial size. Chainlink is one of them, and it's literally for that reason, because I know how important that information transfer is from one place to the next. So I
Yeah.
believe that it will do very well.
And I just want to say one like little 12-month window here. You know, from the peak, it looks like it was May 8th of 21, hit right around $50. And if we go to around May 8th of 20, let's see, about right there, a 12x, 13x. So did about a 13, almost a 15x in 12-month time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the market cap can support that, but I'm expecting, nominal gains there. All right, well, let's, we're not analysts and, I'm not a war correspondent, but let's briefly talk about the conflict evolving overseas. This is from Reuters, I believe. Yeah, Reuters. Drone crashes in failed attack southeast of Moscow. Drones hit within, that is not from the article, hit within 65 miles of the nation's capital there. Also hit real close to a gas facility in a different city. And one city, there's reports that it was, a drone flew into an apartment window. It's also hitting vehicles. It's hard to see what footage is real, what footage is not real there. But none of the drones apparently had any loads for large explosives. So it's a lot of speculation on what is happening here. Is this part of a larger strike? Is this, not real? Is this, it's a lot of questions. There's more questions than answers. Now, mind your biz. I'm not going to say, what is Putin thinking or, what do you think of Zelensky? But what do you think, just in a vacuum, what do you think of drone warfare? It is one of my biggest fears. I don't think anybody's really given it enough attention. What's mind your business thoughts on that aspect of warfare?
Well, first off, shout out to the drone builders and shout out to the tech heads that make all these innovations possible, because there actually has been a marked decrease in the loss of life in the theater of war because of tech like this in terms of our guys, right? And while I have a lot of empathy for anybody who lives in a war-torn area of the world, and I would never wish the ravage of war on any nation anywhere, if we do engage in some kind of armed conflict, I would rather that my guys, our sons, that they decrease the likelihood of them being damaged by that war, by that conflict. So this kind of unmanned aerial vehicle that was discovered in that region, first off, these are surveillance drones by any other name. The fact that they didn't have any kind of a dangerous payload involved means that they were being used for some kind of reconnaissance. They were being used to be able to take any kind of, some kind of photos. And we have a long, rich history of this type of technology. Even pre-computer age, right? Even pre-information age, this type of aerial surveillance was being done. And that type of intelligence being gathered has helped to decrease the loss of human life. So it's kind of an important thing to have in a theater of war when you have an active war zone, rather. So, I'm not too shocked to see that this has happened, right? That these things are being shot down. Is it saber rattling? Probably. Is it going to have an effect on the markets? That's where I start to think it's less important, frankly, easy. Because, the technology itself, as far as there being unmanned aerial vehicles, drones that fly around to take pictures, so we know where to send our troops and where not to send our troops, where to send our freedom pills and where not to send them. These are important questions to ask, right? And I would much rather have a robot or a drone do it than to have, say, my nephew do it or my son do it or your son do it. I would never wish that on your family, and I don't want that for my family. So I see this kind of technology. Actually, it does give me hope for humanity. It does make me a little bit more proud, right, to be involved in the human race at this point in history, as opposed to focusing on only the negative. It's no, that there's a little silver lining to this story just by virtue of the fact that it was a surveillance drone. Now, that said, I know people who built these kinds of things. And when I said that shout out in the beginning, it's because I have a little bit of insight into what it takes to make these things run. And there are levels to that game. What we're seeing over there on the border that's being sent out by Ukraine, this could very likely be 10 or even 15-year-old technology because it gets the job done. It does. It gets the job done by way of surveillance. It doesn't really require a whole lot of really next level advanced tech to be able to take photos, to be able to bring it back, and then to be able to work through that intel that was gathered from the air. The newer systems, the newer tech, the stuff that people are getting excited about putting out into the field there, it's just not necessary. When we talk about AI taking over, forget AI. You don't need AI. That's entirely unnecessary. We've had computer vision, and it's been open source literally, if you're curious enough and you're hardworking enough, for the last 15 years, you could have built these same systems at home as a civilian. You could have literally flown them across the border into Mexico. Ask me how I know. Anyway, I could really go on a tangent.
Is that why you bought that
favorite.
house on the Rio Grande? We're kidding, of course. Yeah, and you said 15 years ago they get the job done. They are reliable. It just made me immediately think of cell phones, the Nokia brick. So it's coming from the Nokia brick era of electronics. Of course these things work. Of course you can't take it out. It all makes sense now to me. All right, now TShroom, let's just say, the court of public opinion starts seeing more of an offensive role coming from Ukraine and more of a defensive role coming from Russia, things approaching Moscow and the like. If Ukraine is being seen as on the offense, do you think that will maybe have people feel a little bit less eager to send over tens and hundreds of billions of dollars?
That's an interesting question, DZ. I am a officer candidate in the Florida National Guard, which is a branch of the U.S. Army. So there's only so much I can say on this topic. But what I'll say is that there's a lot of important considerations here. Of the national security implications of this for Russia, right? For the United States and for the Ukraine. But uh, to your point specifically, it's interesting. I hadn't thought too much about that, but the American people seem to be willing. A certain side of the American people, from a political standpoint, seem to be very willing to continue to write checks to the Ukraine. And it's a tough conversation, right? There's no it's easy right or wrong, black or white answer to whether or not the United States should be funding and sending weapons and fighting on the side of the Ukraine. There's a lot of very smart people on both sides of the argument. But what's clear to me is that it's people that matter. Like none of your business said, and I noticed that his eyes went away for this question. His eyes were open for this question, which was really good to see. The that the uh, it's really about the people, and at the end of the day, that's why I joined the force, is to be able to protect, right? And what needs to happen is that people need to be put in the priority here. And if it takes money, if it takes funding, we have theoretically elected the best and brightest minds to be able to make those decisions. We just have to trust the process. And that's something you become very accustomed to in the army is trusting the process. So I can leave it there. But what I will say is that if you've ever played Warzone 2, the new iteration of Call of Duty's free battle royale game, which I play quite often with my buddies, there is a bomb drone, which if they can dream it up over there at Activision, right? Certainly, militaries have the capability to have an explosive payload. That may be kind of where I'll stop saying things about that. But those will actually absolutely pack a punch against your opposition on the game Warzone, made by Activision Call of Duty, right? And you can easily knock out your opponent. That's all I'll say, and easily knock out one opponent who's running around trying to escape your violence.
And I will say, for the people replying, or thinking, oh, well, it's just a video game. They have long had a history with the U.S. military where they are able to come get, the official audio of certain things. Some would say the video game itself is a glorification, which then leads to higher recruitment. So they've had a cozy relationship for sure, similar to like with Michael Bay, even. All right, now, Joe, let's just say a black swan event arises from this. Maybe a UAV hits a head of state, chaos ensues. Do you think that will invalidate the 4-year Bitcoin cycle? Because assuming, we haven't really had quantitative tightening. We really haven't had anything that, has gone contrary to the stock market like this. So will that correlation of, NASDAQ and tech stocks and risk assets, will that correlation finally break just because the halving is that powerful?
I mean, I think a black swan could certainly happen if something crazy did happen, and we all hope that it does not. I think that anything in life can happen, but what we've seen from data, if you look back at like all the way the stock market in the 40s, the 50s, Pearl Harbor defeats and the Coral Sea at Midway, that was literally the bottom of the Dow Jones. And then from there, it just went up. So if we did get a black swan, what previous data has kind of showed us is that, and even like the dip, the COVID crash, it crashed and then it recovered. So if we do get something like that, I would only assume that it would be potentially another one of those crazy opportunities, right? But again, no one knows for sure what will ever happen in cryptocurrency, and you can't sit here and, you know, try to fortune tell into the future. You can only go off of what you have in front of you at the time. But it's something to pay attention to, certainly. Like, it's another factor into going into your decision making as an investor, right? Like, you have to be prepared for anything to happen at any time and for these crazy black swans, because I personally was in the camp that the Bitcoin price, the bottom was in June, and in all seriousness, the Ethereum bottom was in June, and a lot of these altcoins were in June. And even with the FTX collapse, we have not seen lower prices. And so, but Bitcoins did go lower. So you have to be able to be flexible in these markets and understand that anything can happen. That sounds really simple, but it really can. And you really need to prepare for both sides at all times, right? As anyone gets invested in anything, like, you really do need to be prepared. And just again, from my own experience here, make sure to really factor in all of these different elements, because if you're just overly too bullish and overly too leveraged or overly too bearish, that's typically when you end up making emotional mistakes, and that's not where you want to be as an investor typically.
And I'm glad you brought up the June lows. Another interesting point from that area, that might be the last time we see Ethereum under $1,000. You can see it right there coming in on the 18th. But the FTX collapse couldn't quite get it there. You see it there, a hard bounce off of 1,100. So strong support. ETH just maybe it'll never go below 1,000. Maybe it'll never be 3 digits. I don't know. I'm not the guy telling you to bet the farm on it. But now, we're gonna wrap it up with Crypto Keeper here. Now, you have a project, an NFT project, Danger Close Alpha. So I'm sure this conflict is of a little bit more importance to you. You're probably paying a little bit more attention than the average citizen. As we move into AI warfare, what do you think that does to civilian casualties? Is it going to make things a lot safer? Or since we lose that human judgment, is it a bunch of T-1000s just, wrecking everybody except people named John Connor?
Yeah, so great question, DZ. And as a United States Marine, I have seen a lot of things that might surprise some of you and it might not surprise others of you. So I got out about 10 years ago, and the technology, some of which I can't talk about, but some of the technology that I saw even 10 years ago, I believe would blow your mind right now if we talked about it. So I can't even imagine, after being out for 10 years, what has happened to advance that technology from then. And so the question that you're asking is AI going to turn this into a Terminator type experience, right? Well, the AI, just like ChatGPT, has to be programmed. And so who is programming this, and what is the goal of said programming? If the goal within the programming states, minimize civilian casualties, and there are parameters with, set within, the problem with that is we're talking about a war. And unfortunately, we have something called collateral damage in war. And part of what presses, unfortunately, and it's a terrible thing to say, but part of what puts pressure sometimes on a community or on a country or on a group of people or a certain sect of individuals is chaos and violence and death. And it's not a great thing, but it's used for the advantage of the country that is trying to apply pressure. And unfortunately, without getting politically charged into this, we are always involved. We're either playing Big Brother, where we're, hey, we're here to back you up after you got beat up in the locker room, and we're going to be here for you, or we're going to be standing back behind running our mouth. Whatever the case may be, the U.S. is always involved, always willing to throw money at something, always willing to make sure we are there. And so I'm hoping that at some point we can take care of our own people, period. I just want to see the United States say, hey, you know what? Home is where we need to take care of first. And I do want to see more and more and more and more lives saved as a result of some changes in technology. But yeah, I don't know that that's ultimately the goal when it comes to war. It is unfortunately bloodshed and whatnot. And DZ, let me just stop you real quick. Before Mind Your Biz wins, he has taken 2 wins away from me. So I just want to throw out there that I want to donate my points to TShroom today, because TShroom killed it on the on the show today. So TShroom, you are the man. You can have all 19 of my points. You crushed Mind Your Biz.
All right. And
But
with
what if
that,
I
he
want to
does-
give all my points to Joe?
Oh, then we have a 41 versus 37 situation there. So, I mean, I don't know, but I think he got that in ahead of time. Now, Keeper, really, really good points there. And again, thank you for your service, everybody involved. Hit that like button if you want to support our troops. We definitely support them around here at Hit Network. So, all right, that is all we have time for. Now we're gonna give it to TShroom. Mind your biz. If he hadn't said you got consecutive victories here, buddy. You got consecutive victories. So TShroom,
Turnabout's fair play. I did it for twice.
Feel free, share some secrets. Tell us about DeSantis' SEAL career. Give us all the deep state info here. I'm kidding, of course. Feel free. Where can we find you? Leave us with some parting thoughts.
I appreciate you clarifying you were kidding, because I was ready to go ahead and divulge everything.
Oh
that you told me.
man.
Yeah, but no, definitely so happy to be on, guys. I've been truly a long time watcher and listener. It's a true honor. So thank you guys so much for having me on. Definitely check us out at the Investing Bros. Tim Warren's on here all the time. TA Tim, slinging it with the charts. He loves it, baby, and you love him. We're over there on the Investing Bros. Come check us out on YouTube. And thank you so much for watching and giving me the opportunity to come on. I love to be around this kind of company. So awesome.
And you see me shaking my head. I didn't know he had a panhandle as the charm on his. I take it all back, but it is too late, and that is all we have time for. Florida fam, hit that like button. I'm talking to you, Kat. Until next time, easy out.